in the United States of America. Alan Lange is with us, and Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the House, it's Trey Lamar. Good morning, sir. Mr. Cameron, how you doing, sir?
Good morning, Paul.
It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Alan, we just any questions you have, we'll just throw this up here. But I think number one, we'll talk about the, by the way, District 8, we'll talk about the medical marijuana bill yesterday that was passed. You need something here? Is it working?
I don't think I can hear you.
Is it plugged in, first of all?
It's plugged in.
All right, here's what we do. We make this on-the-air chant. Just grab another pair of earphones.
Yeah.
And the volume's up. It was working for you,
Yeah, it was
wasn't
working.
it?
It's fine.
Would you screw it up or what?
I may have. Hold on. Let's try. Maybe I get the.
You get the volume down on it? Let's see here. Testing 1, 2. It's on the air. How about now? Is that working?
Nothing in those ears, I'll tell you that.
All right, do me a favor. Just switch over here. Hey, Alan, you don't have to do this in your old politics.
I know.
No, it's a little bit different. Could have massive problems here. 3 incumbents easily won Mississippi's U.S. House primaries yesterday at the favorite as the favorite of the Democratic U.S. Senate race. Mike Espy dominated 2 opponents. Will now brace for a November rematch with Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Incumbent Republicans Michael Guest of District 3 beat James Tulp, 28-year-old. Michael Guest got 90% of the votes. Stephen Palazzo got 65% of the vote. And Benny Thompson got 90% of the vote.
That's a lot.
It was expected for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there any surprises for you on that one, Alan, as far as, because you probably the most active was with 2 candidates out of the 2nd district?
Yeah, there's going to be a runoff in the GOP primary.
Or I should say 4th district.
That's right. In the 4th district, there were 4 candidates.
Yeah.
But
runoff where?
In the 2nd congressional district on the GOP side.
Okay.
I can't Kerry and I can't think of the other one. But there will be a runoff for the GOP nomination to run against Benny Thompson in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
In 2 weeks. And by the way, the endorsement in Alabama went to Tommy Tuberville for
That's
the president.
right. Trump came out last night for Tubbs.
All right.
Old Pine Box Tommy.
Mr. Chairman, is it working now?
Yeah, I think we are good to go, Paul.
Well, you don't get your money back now, so it's been satisfied. Let's talk about this initiative alternative that came in yesterday, and what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, HCR 39. Mm-hmm. HCR 39 is an alternate language that, if passed, will compete. Will also be on the ballot to give people an option. To vote for a what the majority of House members believe will be a real medical marijuana program.
How does this differ from what the initiative is as far as 65 is concerned?
Well, Initiative 65 has lots of problems. Yeah. I can go through a lot of them.
Let's go through some of those.
Yeah, let's do that. Right out of the gate, Initiative 65 turns the Mississippi Constitution on its head, takes away the taxing and the appropriating authority from the legislature, and it gives that to an executive branch agency. That is a complete.
It's never been done before.
That's a complete adulteration of the separation of powers doctrine in this state. It's a problem. Most people who are for a real medical marijuana program believe that the state ought to be able to properly tax it and ought to be able to use the funds from the sale of marijuana for many state needs that we have.
Well, how can you do that if it's against the law as far as federal is concerned?
Well, that's a great issue. Other states have done it. And that's a very legitimate point. If the feds ever decide they want to enforce their laws,
Colorado is actually taxing it and making money from it.
Yes.
What are they doing with the money that they make?
I have no idea what Colorado's doing with it, but I do understand it creates a lot of money.
No, I'm talking.
They're apparently having fun with it. Whatever.
Apparently they are. Are they putting it in the bank? And can we do that? Nobody could give me an answer to that.
Well, I believe we can. The state can tax it. I think the issues are, what are these businesses doing with the money that they have back and forth? We have the right to tax our citizens and the businesses that are operating here, but the issue is, what are the ones that are in those businesses? What are they doing with the money? It's largely a cash business from what I've been told.
Okay, taxation number one. Give me number 2.
Appropriating authority. It would give it to the Department of Health, and it would state that the Department of Health cannot – it caps the amount of tax at no more than the general sales tax rate. Is what the Initiative 65 would do. And then it would state that any funds that are derived can only be spent in furtherance of the marijuana program. And so our general sales tax rate is 7%, which means the tax rate could be set anywhere from 0 to 7%. Will be determined by the Department of Health, not by the legislative body. And the decisions on how to spend it will be decided by the Department of Health, not the legislative body. That's a complete adulteration of how our separation of powers doctrine works in this state.
I'm missing something here, because before this initiative made it to the ballot, did we check it out to see if all these things were legal and would comport?
It's a good question. What most people were asked when they were gaining the signatures is, are you in favor of a medical marijuana program or not? And my understanding is there's a majority of people that are in favor of that.
Sure.
More than 50%. They were not explained the details of the language that were going to be put into the Constitution should this pass.
Okay, I don't want to simplify this, and Alan, jump in on here if you want to, but if you put something that was totally against the Constitution itself, let's just say something that was back to a poll tax or something that ridiculous. If it was included in there, you couldn't put that into an initiative, could you?
Well, They have, and we're going to get a chance to vote on it in November.
Well, talk just a little bit about it, because I think the folks who were originally behind Initiative 65 have basically said, "Oh, you just don't want medical marijuana." They've portrayed this effort as something to really, really spike it. Is it that, or is it, hey, we really do want medical marijuana, but we want it in a different way?
I stated from the House floor yesterday, I certainly stand by that now and will continue to stand by it. I believe that a properly administered medical marijuana program could be a very good thing. It could help people who are in need of that type of help.
Let me go to this one, too, as far as the dispensaries themselves. Is there something that differentiates the two bills there?
Well, basically what the HCR 39, I've got a copy of it here if we want to refer to it, but it would just states that medical professionals would design a program, states that the state will have a medical marijuana program. And just like Initiative 65, if 39 passes, HCR 39, which will be 65A on the ballot, 65 alternate, then at that point in time, it will also be in the Constitution. So, to put marijuana in the Constitution, Paul, trivializes, in my opinion, the Constitution. It just does. We don't have alcohol in the Constitution. We don't have any other drugs in our Constitution. So that's an issue in and of itself.
Well, let me get back to the dispensaries one more time, though. As far as the number and the regulations, or who does it and all that, as far as who can put up a branch here or a store here or a pot shop here.
Great question.
Does that differ in any way between the two?
It certainly does. In 65, which is the original language, not the alternate, there are no limits whatsoever placed on the amount of licenses or permits that can be issued in the state.
And yours does it?
Certainly, yeah. There shall be a properly determined amount of licenses where it can be properly regulated. If you have an unlimited amount of licenses given out, the Department of Health, especially with the limited taxing authority, is not going to be able to properly regulate it. And so what you're going to have Farmer Joe over here growing some low-level stuff. You're going to have a high-tech group over here growing some real high-end marijuana. The THC is going to be different in both of those. And so if you're a doctor and you're prescribing, give your patient a prescription for marijuana, you're not going to have any reliability that what your patient is actually getting. If I give my patient, and I'm a doctor, 500 milligrams of antibiotic, I can rely that he's going to actually get that. Not so under 65.
And there comes the malpractice and everything else. I don't see how a doctor does this. I absolutely positively cannot see, unless it's a terminal patient.
Well, if we can properly regulate it and the doctors can rely on that, that's a different story. But under 65, that's not possible.
Let's get back and talk more about this. But going back to the terminal patient, I think the terminal patient in your bill, where the difference is they are the only one permitted to smoke it.
Right.
And that's by design or a decree from the doctor himself or herself.
Correct.
And in their bill, anybody can smoke it.
Yes.
We will be back with more. Take a couple of puffs after this. In the studio, it is Chairman of Ways and Means, Trey Lamar, and also Alan Lange. And on the phone, it's the mayor of Ocean Springs, Shay Dobson. Good morning, Shay. Mayor, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good.
I appreciate y'all having me. I just got a call and told y'all were discussing the HRC 39.
Yeah. Your input on this?
Well, I was just, I think it's a dangerous bill designed to, stifle the will of the people of Mississippi, if you will. I think that, the people of Mississippi deserve a true up or down vote on medical marijuana, and I believe that this is a tactic by, I don't know if it's done by leadership or what, to go ahead and kill this. So it's very frustrating that we're having some Jackson politicians, push this and try to stifle the will of the people. Here's what I'll do.
I'm love to get you on for a full program and get your thoughts on it, and want to make sure we get this side of it on this conversation, because we just don't have enough time for both of them. But Perez, if you don't mind, sir, just grab the number and the contact. We'll get back with the mayor. But of course, the Ways and Means chairman has a totally different view on it. And Trey, we were talking about the license, how much the license cost. Several thousand for a liquor store, but you say it's how much on this one as far as 65 is concerned?
Well, it says it will be set a reasonable license amount is what will be set. Reasonable license amount. So, look, but some other differences. I want to respond to what the mayor said there for a minute if we can.
Sure.
The bottom line is that 65, the language that will go into the Constitutional 65 is just one notch removed from recreational marijuana. And if that's what the people of this state want, then they need to come out and say that's what we're after. 5 ounces of weed a month is what you get under.
Which turns out to be about how many?
About 300 joints a month.
300 joints a month.
You can smoke 3 joints a day for a month, every day for a month. And at the end of the month, you get 200 marijuana cigarettes left over.
For a lot of people today, that's a promotional. That's not a negative.
Okay. Well, what's going to happen to those 200 marijuana cigarettes at the end of the month? Think about that. And you've got the money derived from this can only be spent on furtherance of the marijuana program. Where's the additional cost from law enforcement and all these other issues, societal issues that could come from that? If we want a recreational marijuana program, then these people need to stand up and say, that's what we want, and let's go after it. They don't need to use the guise of a genuine medical marijuana program to accomplish the recreational marijuana that they really want.
Would you say, and Alan, you can throw in on this one, just about every state now, and I think there are 33 that have medical marijuana. Some have already moved into recreational marijuana, and many of the others are on their way. That's where they're leaning.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, certainly it's a trend that's moving through the country. Trey, talk a little bit about what the difference is in terms of the scope of diseases or maladies that a doctor could prescribe for in 65 versus HCR 39.
The diseases is I don't know that there's a whole lot of difference. I mean, HCR 39 is designed to be a real medical marijuana program that will be developed by healthcare professionals, that will be properly administered, properly licensed, properly regulated. 65 is not that. It is not that. It's designed to flood the market with marijuana. It exempts the legislature from ever tweaking it, having anything to do with it. If we determine that 30 years from now that smoking marijuana is not healthy, it's not good, you have to go back into our Constitution. If we're going to have a medical marijuana program, then we need to have it in the general laws of the state, not in our Constitution. That's my opinion. But we are where we are. And HCR 39 will give the people a chance to vote on a legitimate medical marijuana program. If they want recreational marijuana or a large step in that direction, they need to vote for 65A. 65. If they don't, they need to vote for 65A.
One of the things we have to understand on here, too, is that it's still against the law federally. And that hasn't gone away yet. And it could change in the future. And most of the states are just overlooking this.
Sure.
But let's take guns, for instance. If tomorrow, Colorado or Vermont or wherever the hell it's sold, recreational or medical, if they decide, you guys got to turn your guns in, or you can't buy a gun now because you've got a medical marijuana card, it could be done there. It could be done here. Could it not, Trey? I mean, because my understanding
the federal
is
government can decide to enforce their laws anytime they want to. That's right.
Well, there's some other things, too, because I asked this yesterday when the panel was on with me as far as government jobs. How's all this play? Is this spelled out? If you have a government job, can you? Yeah. I asked Chairman DeBar from Education, can you be a teacher? Can you have medical marijuana in your system and be a teacher or a bus driver or a principal or a coach? Does anybody know?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I believe that the government would still have, your employer would still have the ability to regulate whether or not you can come to work
private or
high.
Public. They could say if you can't smoke.
Both. They should be able to, but at the same time, you're going to have if this passes, if the other passes, you're going to have a medical marijuana program in your Constitution, so that person can make arguments there as well. But that said, that's a really good point, because if it's something that has not been taken into account, I believe, is that if a doctor prescribes you medical marijuana to take, you have a doctor's order to take it. If a doctor gives me a prescription, I'm ordered by the doctor to take it. Well, that's a constitutional right under the way this is written. If it passes, what do we do there? That's a potential unintended consequence that has not been completely thought through. If you're given 300 marijuana cigarettes to smoke a month, is it realistic to think that person is not going to drive to town to the store? Is it realistic to think that person's not going to go to work that month?
Well, first of all, here's one of the things we're missing is a doctor can't write a prescription for marijuana because it's a Schedule 1.
They'll be able to if 65 passes.
Could he do that then? He would be allowed to do that?
If they want to take that risk, they can do it.
Well, but that's a risk, though. I mean, I'm saying legally, can they do that?
They could do it under Mississippi law if this were to pass.
Alan, any thoughts on this?
No, and I think it bears repeating because we went through this with Initiative 42. Can you just kind of walk through kind of what the electoral math is in terms of when people vote for 65 or 65A and kind of what passes and what doesn't?
I'll be glad to. And I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, a legitimate medical marijuana program could be a good thing for the state. I believe that. There are people who probably need this drug. That said, the legislature has been accused of trying to confuse the issue. This is really not a confusing issue. You're going to get, if HCR 39 passes the Senate and it becomes where it goes on the ballot as well, you'll have two questions. Are you in favor of medical marijuana, yes or no? And this is in November when you show up at the ballot. You in favor of it, yes or no? If we're going to have medical marijuana, would you like 65 or 65A? It's just two questions. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's not that confusing.
So, a majority on both?
It has to have a majority. No, it has to have a majority on if you're in favor of it. Okay? And then whether you go to 65 or 65A, 40% of the people voting in the election have to vote for one or the other.
Okay. And what if
two questions?
What if both? I mean, so 65 or 65A, it's an apple or an orange.
Yeah, you can't vote for both.
Can't vote for both. You can only vote for one of those. Okay.
Well, the other thing on here, too, and we were talking about this off the air, and Trey Lamar is my guest, is there is a real chance we're going to have medical marijuana in the state.
I believe that.
And
sooner
if we
or rather
do,
than later.
we either put the trust in the state legislature to make sure we do it the right way. And again, I mentioned this yesterday. It's kind of a replay of casinos. If we had the casino come into the state and we did it through the initiative and we did it from one perspective here without going in and finding out exactly what worked, what did not work, and put it through the legislative process, we probably wouldn't have the casino industry we have, the gaming industry we have today.
Well, I wasn't around at that time, Paul. Let me hit on a few more really important problems I see with the language from 65. Were you aware, or were the listeners aware, that under 65, anybody associated with the marijuana business and doctors and caregivers are completely exempted from all civil and criminal liability in that provision? Do people know that? We don't exempt people associated with any other drugs or alcohol from civil and criminal liability. Why are we going to do that?
So if they got some bad stuff, they couldn't sue?
No, not at all.
If the doctor overprescribed, there's doesn't go to no lawsuit there.
Well, I guess that's what is 300 marijuana cigarettes a month. Is that overprescribing? That's what they put in there. They're allowed to do. So,
that's a good
but
question.
If the doctor violated or breached the standard of care in treating that patient, as long as he was within that those guidelines, there's no liability whatsoever.
Final segment's coming up next, and we'll continue this. Well, we had a good conversation going on off the air. We were talking about quality control, too, and nobody knows, because yesterday I couldn't get an answer on this one as far as quality control. We don't know how, we talk about, let's just say it's done, but what's in it? Is it contaminated? Is it what the levels of THC happens to be? There are so many questions that cannot be answered right now. Some of those because of the logistics, in some through the sheer capability of what the Mississippi Department of Health can handle.
That's why it has to be properly regulated, Paul. We have to have a limited number of licenses out there so the Department of Health can do its job and make sure that the patients who need this drug actually get the drug, and they get what his or her doctor is prescribing them and saying that they should get.
If there's an overabundance of 15 in the corner, then some of them are not going to be financially solid.
No way to properly.
And what's that going to do to them cutting corners to their product? I have no idea what's going to happen.
Let me give you an example. The state of Oklahoma is a good state to look at who, in my opinion, did not do it correctly. They did not cap the number of licenses they would allow in that state, and the last time we looked, they had over 10,000 marijuana licenses in that state. You can't properly regulate that. A state Mississippi size cannot properly regulate that.
DA from Harrison County, good morning, sir. Who is this?
Good morning. I'm not a DA. I'm actually a DUI defense attorney in Gulfport. My name's Aaron Hommel.
Yep.
And I was calling about the conversation that was going on with the idea that you'd be able to drive just because you were prescribed marijuana and then take the marijuana and then drive. You totally would still get potentially a DUI if you were pulled over and then cited for that.
Well, that's another good point, too. Are there, other than just smelling it and knowing it's against the law, but what would happen if you still couldn't drive in the state of Mississippi with that?
Well, certainly. I mean, you would still be subject to the DUI laws of the state.
Final thoughts, Alan?
No, I mean, look, I think this is a real legislative fight, and I think it's going to be I think it's going to add a lot of interesting flavor to the November election.
And turnout.
And look, I mean, there's a lot of energy on both sides. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of energy on both sides of this.
Yeah. Final thoughts from the Ways and Means Chairman,
yes,
Trey Lamar.
Briefly, let me just point out one other thing. In 65's language, Paul, states that except as what we've already discussed in here, and I'll just read from the language itself, the processing and use of medical marijuana shall be exempt from the application of any state and or local sales taxes or other fees. That's a line that has a problem in their constitutional language, in my opinion. Well, what is a fee? What is an other fee? Does that mean the people involved in the business? Because processing is defined in here as anyone involved in the marijuana business. Does that mean they don't pay income taxes associated with that business? That's a real issue. At the end of the day, 65 is a major overreach, Paul, that the majority of people who signed on for a medical marijuana program did not realize what would actually go into the Constitution. The people who signed up deserve if the vote on a real medical marijuana program, not something that's just a notch shy of recreational marijuana that would flood the markets of this state with marijuana.
I have talked to so many people, and I can relate to their feelings on this because I'm the same way. That I just, as far as ethics are concerned, that any member of the House or Senate or anybody else who's pushing this from a political standpoint and has the power to vote on it should not be one of the people who are going to make money off of it in a business later on. Is that asking too much?
That's not asking too much at all. And again, Initiative 65, their language would not prevent physicians who are writing these scripts from being in the marijuana business.
What about any legislators, House or Senate?
No, it would have.
Are there members of the House and Senate that you know of that are going to be in the business of medical marijuana if it passes?
I have been told that there are. I have no direct knowledge of that, but I have been told.
Is that common knowledge to the people out there?
It appears to be.
Should they be telling the people when they're pushing this that they're also going to be in the business of selling it?
Well, I think they should probably let people know that. That would be fair.
There's no changes as for you guys. Tell me the process as far as your 65A right now, because it's still not a done deal. It's got to go through the process.
Well, it's being held in the House right now on a motion to reconsider. We will table that motion today or in the next few days. It'll go to the Senate. And
the Senate doesn't have their own bill.
No, they do not.
So they're going to be working off your bill.
They'll take the House bill. And hopefully the Senate will have a good debate.
This goes over to who, Trey, in the House, in the Senate?
Well, that'll be up to the Lieutenant Governor.
So he could assign anywhere he wants to.
So does the governor have to sign? If the Senate passes it, does the governor have to sign it, or is it just the legislature can put this on the ballot?
Well, you have to remember, Alan, this is a resolution, not a bill. Resolutions are handled a little bit differently, but the effect will be that once it passes the Senate, it will end up on the ballot, and the process will play out in November the way I explained a few minutes ago.
Okay. Could there be a third third on here? And there are two? There would be two. No. I heard that there's a possibility of a third.
Not to my knowledge, no. Anytime an initiative, the law reads, anytime there is a citizen-sponsored initiative, the legislature, it doesn't just have the legal ability, they have the mandate to look at it, review it, and if there needs to be an alternate, they offer an alternate.
So you're going to vote on that today? Will it come back today?
It should not. It could come back today or tomorrow, but that's just a procedural vote, and it'll go to the Senate.
That's what I'm saying. Then it'll go to the Senate.
Yep.
Hey, guys, thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We got more coming up.